Mosab Hasan Yousef, the son of Hamas, just got called racist at an event, and he didn't hold back in his response. Check it out.
So you talk about being pulled by the currents of political ideology. I can agree with you. I can agree with you, right, that being pulled by the political ideology of Islamism is completely incorrect and immoral. But it seems as though you haven't really dived too deep below the waters, and it seems that you're being pulled by a different current and a different ideology. And I think the ideology that you're preaching here is in more than one way Islamophobic. And let me explain to you why I believe so. I will equally condemn Hamas right here on the spot, so we can all be clear in this room, right? Thank you for that. But what you are saying, right? And you talk about the treatment of blacks, you talk about the treatment of women, right? You talk about the only democracy in the Middle East. You talk about Arab inability to forge nations, to forge countries. You talk about the lack of existence of a Palestinian.
Don't only talk about it.
I understand. That's you're making my point for me. Thank you. You talk about the lack of existence of a Palestinian identity, and with all due respect, I know you're Palestinian, or some would say that you are. So you have a right to, disavow yourself of that. But you do not have a right to tell other people that their identity does not exist. I believe that it is incorrect, it is immoral to say what identities do and do not exist, to dictate. That is almost the definition of being a bigot, right? And I'm not trying to name call right now, I'm just trying to call it how I see it, right? And so if we can both agree that we're going to condemn Hamas, but also equally refrain from being Orientalist, refrain from being Islamophobic, then we can have a productive conversation. But I am sorry, sir, your rhetoric is inflammatory. You trade in fear. You trade in fear.
Now you're accusing me. You're accusing me.
Closing point.
It's your point to just accuse me.
Closing point.
Okay.
I'm calling it how I see it, so feel free to retort. But this is my last point. So Samuel Huntington has this idea of the clash of civilizations, right? And I saw you spoke to Sam Harris. Sam Harris subscribes to this idea as well. But you portray this idea of the Islam versus the West. Islam versus the West. And I think this is a very, very dangerous idea. If we're both talking about Islamists, right, we can kind of get on the same page. But you say Islamist, but in your rhetoric you describe the Islamic civilization generally, proper, right? So let's just make sure we're getting clear about that. But I think that is inflammatory. I think that you're trading in fear, and I think that is very, very harmful. And that's just what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, well, look, you can call somebody who's not familiar with a phenomena that they have a phobia of that. Like someone has phobia of something that is unknown to them. You can say that. You can say this about anybody who did not grow up in that region. But as someone who went to a Sharia school, someone who memorized huge portions of the Quran, someone who speaks the classic Arabic, someone who studied so many Islamic denominations, you cannot accuse them. Are you listening to my answer? You see, you're busy right now, right? Suddenly you're busy.
Listen, I heard exactly what you had to say, and I agree. Islamophobic.
But you want to debate me right now?
Maybe after.
You want to debate me? Then you need to listen to me until I finish.
Please.
Sit down. Sit down and listen. Okay. So I speak on experience, long experience, much longer experience than your experience combined. Not to reduce you, but have you been to a Sharia school?
No, but I lived.
You haven't. Have you studied the Sharia? Have you studied the Sharia, the 4 major books of legislation? Have you studied them?
Not fully in depth, but I understand Sharia. I studied Sharia, yes.
So name the 4 main sources of Islam. Why you cannot do it? You said that you studied it.
So when you have Sharia, you're talking about Sharia jurisprudence, you have...
I need the sources. There are 4 main sources of Islam all Muslims agree on. What are the 4 sources?
You have Sunnah, you have Hadith, right? You have Quran, right?
That's not it. That's not it. You forgot Qiyas and Ijma'. So please sit down and listen. Please sit down and listen. I don't have phobia of Islam. I was born in Islam. You cannot tell a cup that they have a phobia of cats. Because this is their environment. You know, you tell somebody who never been to the situation Islamophobic, but I, as a son of the religion, I don't have a phobia. I have the right to rebel. I have the birthright to rebel. I tell you something. I don't mind speaking to him after the event if this is what he wants. Okay, and I don't mind actually debating someone. But the thing is, when you accuse someone, you must support. You know, you accuse me of Islamophobia. This is a big accusation. How can be Islamophobic if this is my natural environment? You know, you cannot tell a fish to be that a fish is afraid of water.
Well,
you know,
why don't you have the last
nonsense.
word?
Let me just respond very quickly. I don't believe that Islamophobia is a helpful word, right? I think bigotry towards Muslims may be a better one, right? But I'm just using the word that most people understand. When I say that, people know what I'm talking about, right? That's all I'm saying. But we can have this conversation. I wouldn't dwell over the semantics right now, but we could have this conversation more in depth.
Okay, but also you need to understand.
Thank you. And I think Mr. Yousef is saying he is not
look,
a bigot.
If it was a different function, okay, and I can talk Islam with you all day long, I have no fear, I have no problem of discussing religion, criticizing religion. It's our freedom in this country. You know, people criticize Christianity, criticize Judaism, they make fun of the gods. Why cannot I make the fun of the gods, you know, that I was brought up? But anyway, this is not the right place. Look, I don't want to be offensive. I don't want to be offensive to anybody, but thank you for bringing the topic. We were focusing on Gaza. You tell me that you're from Sudan. You're about like 2,000 miles away. Have you ever been to Palestine or to Israel? You've never been there. So you shake your head when I said the black situation in the territories in denial, but you've never been there. Okay. Look, man, I like to build bridges, but false accusations I don't like. And I don't like hypocrisy. I like free people who don't hide in the crowd.
I'm sorry, we really have to end.
Wow. Strong words from Mosab Hasan Yousef. Again, he's saying that, you know, he grew up with this. He understands what was said. He understands what people's beliefs are in that region. And criticizing a religion is not Islamophobia, it's not racism, it's just criticizing a doctrine of belief. You know, just like a Republican can criticize a Democrat, a non-Muslim can criticize Islam. You know, it's just part of free society. It's what, you know, coming to America is about. It's a bad argument to attack someone for being a bigot or a racist, because it's much better to point by point explain to them why their beliefs are wrong with evidence and proof, as opposed to just going after their character. For more, subscribe to Jewish Uncensored. If you want to help us make more of these videos, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored.